I've got a sort of background. I'm a military background, but also a consultant to other militaries and governments through national or international crisis, mainly Iraq. I spent 8 years in Iraq working alongside the Americans and the Iraqis, and we would often sit in what was called targeting cells. Targeting would be lethal and non-lethal. My favourite would always be non-lethal, obviously.
Yes.
However, it was still targeting. Now,
just translate that for me. I'm a bear of very little brain, and when I'm talking to someone who clearly knows exactly what he's talking about, I'm always keen to pinpoint precisely what you mean. What's a targeting cell?
We made as a cell, we would look at an effect cell. We would want to create an effect in a certain area, address a certain problem. So, for example,
so you're in the cell. You're talking about. Can I use the word squad?
Yeah.
So you'd be in so a lethal or a non-lethal squad. You've got a mission to go in somewhere and possibly take someone out. That's a euphemism. Possibly kill someone, or you've got a different mission, which might be to kidnap them or to neutralise some equipment, or so that I get. And you do this. You have done this. You do this.
Not quite as dramatic as that. And reverse back a little bit. This is a planning cell, so we wouldn't necessarily be the execution arm. We would be the planning piece. Yes?
Okay. Yeah.
So
got it.
For example, we would look at a certain area of the battle space or the operational environment and say, look, that area there, a specific shake is causing huge issues. So would we look at a kinetic operation, lethal to within the international laws? Live, or would we look at undermining him by maybe coming up with a psyops campaign to undermine how much of a bad man he is?
Okay.
Now, either side of the argument, one of the things we would constantly look at is what would the negative blowback be of this?
Bingo. That's what I'm talking about today, isn't it? Finally, someone understands me. Kevin, thank God you're here.
Yeah. Now, I think both. Obviously, an awful incident in Istanbul.
Yes.
But I think the Saudis are in the same position as many threat force elements to the West right now, is that they're capitalising on not just what is the West, but what is the individual national states, if you like, citizenry, how much faith they have in their national governments.
Yes.
You look at the Skripal case, for example. We were very divided as to the fact that as the government were trying to sell to the British public that this was the Russians, and it was clearly the Russians, but for a very long time, there was a massive, some very intellectual people doubted what the government was saying. And
the leader of Her Majesty's opposition doubted publicly what the government was saying, and suggested that we send the substance to Moscow and ask them if it was theirs. Exactly.
And I think what's happening now is these targeting cells are almost getting a sort of green light on the blowback, as it can be. Look, the West is so sceptical in their current nations because, of course, we sold such a brutal lie in 2003, and I think the hangover of that is being felt right up to today. And countries that would have just said, "Look, we're however awful their sort may be, we just wouldn't get away with that." Right. And the reputational blowback would be
this is what I'm thinking. Oh no.
And actually now they can just fire back to say fake news. You lied in 2003. You lied it was questionable in numerous pieces, and it just throws doubt back at us. And then we just get on with our lives and just say 50-50. We agree to disagree. And
because destabilizing isn't about people believing things that aren't true. It's just about people treating things that aren't true in the same way that they treat the things that are true. It's about just the possibility of doubt.
Correct, exactly. If you can mud the water enough so that doubt becomes normal, then it becomes very difficult and to the point that realistically it undermines our defence services, because we're spending all this money on defence, but if we don't have politicians with clarity and integrity, then what's the point in spending all that money on defence? Because we can never really deploy it, because no one will really believe the rationale and the reason,
and then all roads lead back to Iraq, not just on the notion of intelligence being untrustworthy, but also the notion of military intervention being wrong. So you've got the mother of all whatabouteries. Whenever it is suggested that we have a moral or a legal duty to intervene in international affairs, the voices saying no, you don't, will be loud enough to ensure that nothing happens.
Of course, and Syria is a good example of that. I mean, there were certain points when we could have and should have intervened to help on a humanitarian basis, but there was no way we could sell that because of course, everybody, rightly so, were very concerned about what was sold to them in Iraq. And sometimes, you know what, sometimes we are wrong.
Yes, of course we are.
If you don't lie in the first place, and then you can say, look, that to my best of my knowledge was right, and I'm sorry, then that's one. But so then we were lied to as the sale of it.
So you see. Yeah, although if the aftermath of the toppling of Saddam had gone better, no one would have actually bothered going back to complain about the rationale for the war being undertaken. You're only going to do that retrospectively in the event of a failure of the campaign after the initial, because there was no plan B, there was no aftermath. But anyway, that's a conversation for a different day. Because if I've understood you correctly, then the attempted murder of Sergei Skripal and his daughter gets filed under exactly the same heading. It is something that the cell in Russia would once have thought, well, we can't quite. At least with Litvinenko, they tried to hide their trail. When they murdered Alexander Litvinenko, they were observing the most sort of fundamental rules of espionage. But when they came to do Salisbury, it's almost as if they thought.